I'm Bob Winninger. I live in St. John's, Arizona, and you're listening to the Two Trees Podcast.
If the Two Trees has been a blessing to you, please leave us a review on your favorite podcatcher or visit our website, www.thetwotreespodcast.org, and click the yellow Buy Me a Coffee icon to leave a donation. And now, let's join the conversation.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Two Trees Podcast. I'm John Dillon, and I'm here with Martin Listener.
Hey, y'all.
And the lady who used to previously be my friend, Rosemary Moeller.
Hi, what did I do?
You defriended me
unfriended
on
him.
Facebook.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I did. You were my only friend, and it just seemed excessive. So
The question, what did I do to not be friends with you anymore? I don't know, hit the delete button?
Actually, I had my
feel
son
like
do it.
you looked at that situation and you thought, there's only one thing to do. Not get another friend.
No,
I have to destroy the one that I have.
it was getting awkward.
Well, make a new friend, Rose.
It was getting awkward having just
You
one
get
friend.
Yes,
friend
it really
requests.
was.
Erin has sent you friend requests. She wants to be your friend.
Apparently listeners have sent you friend requests and you still deny them.
I'm not sure how this turned into a mess up John delete moment, but it did.
I felt one of those really good bursts of like when you clean out a closet and then you drop everything off at Goodwill. You're like, I'm so glad I did that.
But with friends, you have that moment where you're like, I'm now friends with 0 people.
Yep.
This is better.
New year, new start.
So much better.
It's February. Anyway, Martin, tell us about our sponsor.
Oh, that's right. We do have another sponsor. It's amazing. I mean, just the sponsorships have been rolling in left and right.
As they should.
You know, we were really searching hard at the beginning of this season to find some sponsorships, and by golly, they have been just flooding in, if you will, with what I said last time, which was, oh, I haven't done it one yet. Sorry, sorry. Flooding in. This one is a really good one. It wouldn't be good for Rose because you do need a friend to go
ouch.
with it. This is Noah's Farm Tours. Noah's Farm Tours has been a really good one. They just flooded in with all of their support, and
I
we
got
love it. Noah's Farm Tours. For best experience, though, go in a group of 2
Or something.
John,
to
John,
Noah's Farm
would you
Tours.
go on an ark?
No.
Okay.
No, you have defriended me. You can swim.
So huge shout out to Noah and his tours of the farm. Best in groups of 2, by the way.
Noted.
Noted. If
But
only-
Rose, tell us what the real people are actually saying about
I
the
was
podcast.
going to say, I actually, as I keep saying, I've had fun reading through these. And this one is from, actually, this is a little bit of an older one, but I liked it. It's by B.A. Sidewalk Astronomer. And this person says, I enjoy the format of open table discussions. Very informative, interesting, and entertaining. Keep up the great work. And they hadn't even heard your sponsorships yet, and you're still entertaining.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the entertaining part of that. Everybody knew
Yeah,
it right
if you
off the
guys
bat.
don't love a good pun, that's a problem with you.
Why are you still listening?
Yeah.
That's the case.
I wonder about open table discussions. Do you guys, are you pro? Do you like panel discussions? What's your favorite? Or just having someone lecture you?
What would you say, like an open table? Like anybody, or just like a few people in front of everybody?
Semi-open table?
Yeah. I mean, I'm for it. I want more Martin and Rose interaction. I feel like I talk too much.
That's literally what you're here for, is
I
to
know.
tell us things. So
We just bounce off of what you give us. So
Well, you're in luck because I have handcrafted this particular outline with that in mind.
Nice.
Is rather than just look at the theory that we've been talking about. How did ancient peoples view temples, the spiritual world, all that stuff? I want to look at the actual Bible verses and bounce the ideas back and forth.
Perfect.
And what do we see the ancient peoples saying in the text? And what do I notice as a modern person? What do I think like an ancient person would have thought about? So we begin by remembering ancient peoples, ancient Near Eastern culture expected to see the supernatural world impacting the physical world around them. They talk about supernatural things by using physical pictures and ideas, and they didn't disconnect a spring or a forest or the stars in the sky into purely physical categories like we do. We see them and we say, wow, God made some amazing things, and that's true. But ancient pagans believed those things were expressions of their God's power. Now, I, as a Christian, recognize that paganism is wrong, that it's built on lies that were told to them from powers of the darkness, that everything that exists in the world is created by God and has a purpose that is to glorify him and to be part of his kingdom. Whether physical or spiritual, it's all part of the kingdom of God. And so what we're going to do is we're going to recognize that in the Bible, there's this tension between the way pagan people saw the world and the way that the people of God were beginning to understand that they'd been swindled and that the true God was explaining to them how the world really is operating. So a place for a pagan was a spot where the deity was localized, that temple. This is special to him, like a power outlet, I think we said. But the Lord presents himself almost the opposite of this, but in similar language. God is not tied to any one space. He can do anything he wants, wherever he wants, but he still gives them physical places that are special, like the Temple Mount, where the Lord put his name, or Mount Sinai. He doesn't just say, go out into the wilderness and I'll just meet you there. Like they're actually going to a specific mountain. And so you can see God is using the language of the ancient world, go to this particular place, but he isn't tying himself to the theology of the ancient world. He's saying more and not less.
It goes back, I know we said it a couple times about how imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, and we went on to the second part of that quote, which is really, I think, apropos for what we're talking about here, with these other beings really trying to portray themselves the same way God does to us. You know, God can only work in ways that we can understand with us, and he is gracious enough to do so, but he gives us places that we can go to signify certain things. He gives us nature and wonderful works so we can have a better understanding of who he is. The other side, the darkness, is trying to do the same thing, but they're claiming things that don't belong to them.
That's
like
right.
The stars are mine, or this is mine. So like the pagan world is not really a reconstruction of what God has done. It's just reassigning the power and authority to someone that doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, it's a ripoff.
When you're looking at it like that. And so Satan wants this the most, and he even claims that when the I wills of Satan, like he wants to take the responsibility that God has done after he created the universe and says, now it's mine. Like, I control this. I'm the one that did all of this. And so you can really understand that it's not really a complete flip-flop of what God has done. It's just reassigning the power and authority into that. When you talk about the Bible saying there'll be no other gods before me, that's the reason, because he is the one that created them. They are trying to put themselves in place of him. And if you go along with what they say, then you're going against what God has put into place. And that really makes it make sense why they would say something like, there's no other gods before me.
Yeah, so they're presenting themselves not as creatures, but as creators. And in reality, God is the one who made everything. There isn't anything that exists that didn't originally come into being by the will and word of the Lord. And so when we see that these dark powers are associating themselves with a particular place, well, that may be because they're a particular creature in a particular spot, but God is unlike them in so many ways. All of creation, not one particular spot. And so I'm seeing all of creation as being subject to the will of the Lord Most High. The physical world was a way of talking about God's unseen majesty and power, but it could also function as a means for God to show his power to his physical imagers. If God were to just say, I love you and I'm going to care for you, that's a very different thing for us than if we actually see, look, it rained manna last night. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I keep thinking of in The Great Divorce when they're looking for the cliff that they landed on or whatever, and they're like, oh, you mean that tiny little crack over there or whatever? And I keep thinking about the God who made everything coming here and how much bigger he is, and the like love and the humility and that he shows, like to come as a baby, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking about what you said about the places that are sacred or that are special, like physical places to him. And he could touch down anywhere he wanted, but he would choose here and he would choose there and set it aside. And I just love that.
I do too. I think that's why I resonate with like Jacob's story where he sees God come down, or the throne room is there, and the ladder or the stairs. And he uses pagan language to explain what he saw. This is the gate of heaven. And then the further into the Bible you read, you recognize, well, Bethel doesn't seem to be the place that all this story orbits around. Maybe he didn't understand exactly what was going on, but he expresses it with the language that he knows. Does that make, and so it's not saying like, oh no, you're wrong. It's God saying, okay, I could see you trying to explain what my kingdom is like, but it's bigger.
It's so interesting because you even just said it yesterday in your sermon when you were talking about how we tried to bring to life some of these principles and ideas that are so much bigger than the words that we can say. And so the only way that we can do that is by the physical, or by expressing it in a way that everybody can see. The problem is, no matter what illustration you find, it's going to fall short in some situation. And I feel like the problem that we have here in the modern West is we just look at the illustration and find where it breaks down and then prove that the original principle is wrong because your illustration falls short.
Right.
And it's like, well, that's not exactly what we're talking about. But it's a great microcosm of what the darkness is doing as well, because they are putting themselves as the illustration, as God, the authority and power. They are the illustration and saying, look what I can do. And then when we say, look, your thing falls short, it's proof that there is a much bigger God out there.
One of the things that I find frustrating about that particular, and you and I have talked about this before, Martin, is that it's almost like people are trying to not understand the point that you're making.
Right.
Instead, what they're doing is they're attacking the bridge that you built to help them see this bigger idea.
Exactly.
And so there are definitely moments like, and I don't want to be that guy who's like, I noticed the flaw. Well, obviously it's a flaw. We're talking about an unlimited, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, immutable God. There is nothing like him. We will not have words that can express him in his totality. And if we did have a word for it, I don't know that my brain could handle thinking a thought like that.
That's the best way to think of it, is just name a color or imagine a color that doesn't happen in nature or doesn't happen in synthetic created
It's
color.
a colorblind joke.
You can't, no, but you just can't, in your mind's eye, create something that doesn't exist. And in your mind's eye, God does not exist on the physical because he is far beyond it. He cannot be limited. He comes down as Jesus, but he is unlimited to the point where we can't even fathom talking about it, let alone make up a word that somehow reaches even the depths of his greatness. Like there's no way that we can physically obtain the ability to understand.
Yeah. And you can kind of see this in many different stories of the Bible. For instance, like ancient Egyptians connected the Nile River with the thing that brings them life, that delivers them from death. And so God doesn't say, all right, this is a pagan river. Let's go somewhere else where there's a river that's not tainted by them. He lets Moses float down the river Nile in a basket to deliver his people. He imposes his kingdom over top of the rebel. And suddenly, the thing that was used by the darkness has in some way been brought back into the story of God.
And Jesus does this a lot in his ministry as well, when he goes against really the grain. I mean, he goes and touches a leper. Like, who does that without coming back with leprosy? Jesus does. His goodness instills into the next person instead of vice versa. So here is God showing it in the Old Testament, like you just mentioned, the idea of Moses going down the river. But then here is Jesus in his ministry proving, I think, his, that he is God, proving that he is God by being able to do physical things that just don't make any sense to you and I as well.
Yeah, because they're bigger. And so when we're looking at an idea, like the Bible doesn't always give us lots of details. So when it does give you details, like Moses in a basket floating up the river, you ought to stop and ask yourself, I wonder why it wanted me to know that. Why doesn't it just say, after a series of very strange circumstances, Moses found himself being raised in the court of Pharaoh's daughter? Instead, it tells you exactly what's going on. Sometimes it will describe the physical appearance of a place or tell you exactly where something is happening. And other times it is so silent that you're begging, please tell me more about this thing that I'm interested in. And there's two reasons that I'd like to discuss this today. And first of them is because this is part of an original conversation that is happening between the author and the original audience, right? When they hear the sea, they don't think of that as a neutral physical thing. They are hearing chaos. They are hearing death. They are hearing the underworld, and all of those things that are going on in it is part of how they talked about these things. And so that is part of what the Bible is saying. But I'm not an ancient person, and I recognize the sea to be not really connected to those things like they were assuming, but that it is a real physical thing. And I'm interested in things like, where did that happen? How did are there archaeological remains? And so the Bible also is talking about recording real events that actually happened. And so which of them is it? It's both. It's almost as though if an author or a poet were to write a story down, the medium that they have to use is words. Or maybe they paid a sketch artist or something and they came in with some illustrations. God seems to take his creativity in storytelling and bring it not just into words, but also into reality. And so you're going to see there are places in the Bible that are almost custom made to express this bigger idea that would have been playing out in the background of an ancient person's mind. And if I, as a modern person, just like jettison all that as wrong things that people used to think before we got smart, you are missing a part of the conversation that is present in Scripture.
I love that idea of the author being limited to the written word to tell their story, or the oral word, but you're using words to tell a story. But a lot of times people will refer to their own life as their story.
Yeah.
And God is leading you to different places, times, things to tell your story, but he has all of creation at his disposal. Just that's in your own personal life, let alone the meta-narrative of the Bible and throughout all creation. So like, it's so interesting to think of God as a storyteller, not in the way of it being a fantasy or a fable, but actually moving throughout creation with his creativity and being able to move all the parts around wherever he needs to get the story accomplished. It's so much more powerful than just like, yeah, these guys ended up in this place somehow and this is how it happened. It's a different way of looking at it.
So, Rose, you're an editor and an educator and a good mother. You are not my friend anymore. You have fired me, and I am salty about it, but that is okay. When you're teaching this way to your children or to your students, do you find that you're using multiple methods of communication at the same time, or do you try to limit yourself to one style?
Oh, that's a good question. No, when they were younger, I would say definitely multiple methods. We did sensory and auditory and, all of the different ways, because sometimes I was trying to find out the best way that they would learn. My three children are pretty similar, but I've taught other children who I just could not get through to this kid, and so I would try to work with them until I would find, within reason, something that would speak to them more and teach them the best way possible. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as you were talking, this is coming to me. Like, I'm starting to get a little bit more what you're saying about. It seems to me as if when we read a story from Scripture that doesn't seem possible, like maybe it's called a miracle, we tend to doubt whether God did it or not. And they would not have doubted that. It would have been, so I asked, like, what is the thing, where is the problem or the conflict in the stories that we just have trouble believing because we're so far removed from it. And so we have to, like, two levels of understanding that we have to work through first. Like, did it really happen? Like, God has to justify his ways to us. Or like, why did it happen? And so when you get to the second one, like the sea represents chaos, that brings a whole different level of interest in. But if you have a stubborn heart that won't even believe in the first place, then the rest is just details. Like, you've already rejected the entire story.
I'm with you. And I think that's exactly what I try to do in my teaching. I don't always do that really well, but I want to understand, especially what you said at the beginning there. I'm trying to figure out how to reach this student, this person. And some people that I teach have been Christians a long, long time. Others are brand new to this. And so in the pulpit on Sundays, you got to try to do all of those things, be all things to all people. Some of our listeners, this may be the first episode they've ever listened to, and they're like, I think I shouldn't have started with this episode. Other people...
Why does she hate him so much? Why did she unfriend him?
That is rude. Other people, have listened to 200 hours of us talking about all kinds of things. And so what I want to do today is not so much to explain this more, is to see a couple places in the Bible and then just talk about it. What are we seeing? How are we noticing this? And so let's see how it works. Let's go to Exodus 15.
So if you're not listening to this right now, it's because it was a big failure and we didn't put it out. But if you are, it's going to be great.
Oh, we're putting it out. We're putting this out. Exodus 15, 19 through 21.
For when the horses of Pharaoh with his chariots and his horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought back the waters of the sea upon them. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground in the midst of the sea. Then Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and dancing. And Miriam sang to them, Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea.
All right, so here we see a actual historical event, the crossing of the Red Sea and the destruction of Pharaoh's host that is part of this big Exodus cycle. But in this particular instance, there are a lot of loaded phrases and word choices that an ancient audience would have keyed onto. And the first of them, I'm going to say, is this horses of Pharaoh with his chariots. When I think of chariots, I think of ancient old tech, like outdated.
Like a
kind
car?
Yeah, not just a car. Well, I do like to call my car my chariot. But like, I don't think like cutting edge technology. You know what I mean? Like, how would a group of people have thought about Pharaoh and his chariots in the ancient world?
You don't think that would have been like advanced?
Oh, it would have been to them, but you wouldn't see it today.
No. But yeah, I mean, it would have been a show of power.
I think that's the word.
That you have horses and that you have, this ability to utilize your resources to get you somewhere faster. I mean, that's technology. In today's world, I mean, we're sending rockets all over the universe at this point. So 2 wheels and a thing that's about a foot off the ground being dragged by 1 horse isn't really on Elon Musk's idea of technology.
but it is unusual. It's not just another tool. It's a tool of war.
Yeah, definitely.
And so what you're seeing here is kind of a comparison between the most powerful man in the world and the king, the God of the universe, the Lord mighty and awesome. And most people are going to naturally be drawn to displays of earthly wealth and power.
Big time.
And so right away, this is the start of where we're walking into this conversation. There's going to be a conflict between the will of man and the powers of this world and the will of God and the powers of the kingdom. And God's will is that his people be delivered. Man's will is that people be controlled. I want you to serve me. I call this the way of Babylon and the way of Eden. And so right away by the word choices, I'm kind of priming the pump here, getting you going, because there's going to be others coming up here in a minute. But right away I see Pharaoh, and it doesn't tell me his name. It just tells me his title. It would have been nice if they dropped his name in there. Would have caused us a lot of internet arguments that have happened in the meantime. But he says, they go into the sea. Now, from what you guys have picked up, when you hear this going into the sea, do you think physical or do you think spiritual instinctively?
Physical.
I would say physical.
Yeah, me too. So with then this understanding that we can all agree, this is a real thing, really happened, real place. They're driving into the sea. What would an ancient Israelite have seen by this?
They're coming after him? Like they're going to get him?
Yeah.
I mean,
What is the
They would have
sea to
seen
them?
no fear. The
I see what
Pharaoh
you're
didn't
saying.
fear the sea.
Yeah, this is a king who is fearless of powers beyond his control, right? The oceans have opened out. Pharaoh should have known, like, that's not normal. I can't do that, despite all of his own propaganda. But he seems to have thought it worked for them. It will work for me. So ancient listeners, when they hear the sea, they're thinking of disorder and chaos and uncontrollable powers, because no one knew, why does the sea roar? Why does it roll? Why are there these really creepy things that live down inside there? Some of them have claws and teeth that are weird, and they seem to be breathing okay, even though that's not normal. None of these things are there. They see big storms that sweep into the land from the sea. And so in their mind, this is a great setting for a conflict to happen, almost as though God picked it. Why doesn't God give them a head start? You know, he's the sovereign king of creation. Couldn't he have guaranteed? I mean, a couple of the wheels fall off of chariots along the way. Suddenly everyone is struck with a plague along the way. Like, God could have done any number of things to stop this from happening,
including the 10 plagues that just happened.
Yeah, it's not like he wasn't like,
scene
it's not running out of ideas. There's more than 10 ways to plague an evil empire. So God doesn't seem to avoid the chaos. He wields it.
It's so interesting because it seems like this whole story, and most of it, I think, pretty much the whole Bible, is about control. We say power a lot, we say authority, but like being in control. And that's today we feel that all the time. I feel like I'm out of control with my life. I'm suffering with whatever you want to say because you don't have control of what's going to happen next.
Right.
And so when you look at this, we even talked about the technology, and I was a little gun shy because I'm like, I felt like I was pretty good technology at the time. But the chariots were a form of power because it was like, I have something that you don't, so I can control you.
Yeah, even the very form of a chariot. I have taken one of the most magnificent creatures that exists, the powerful war horse, and I have harnessed it to my will. Is an expression of mankind's control and power.
But when we look back, we're like, a chariot is a chariot. Like, it could be taken out by an archer on accident. You could miss it, or you could have one lucky shot and the chariot's done.
That's true.
But if you-
it is a serious weapon. People, when they saw chariots, weren't normal weapons of war. Most battles that happened in the ancient world didn't have chariots. If chariots showed up, it was the equivalent of like helicopters flying around. They were battle platforms.
That's going to be my point is, for us looking back, we don't see it as this, amazing form of war and military force, because one Sherman tank could take out the entire Egyptian army. They would have no idea what to do with it. And those went out in the 60s. So the technology is so much more advanced today, it's hard to look at it as a form of power and control.
Right.
But it's very important to look at it that way, because there's so many aspects of your own personal life that you utilize your own chariots to control what's going to happen next. And that's where you're talking about the will of God is to deliver his people. The will of man is to control his people. It's the same thing in your everyday life. It's the same thing in your church. It's the same thing in your work and your school, and everywhere that you go. There's going to be people fighting against who has the control of what is going to happen
So what
next.
you just did there is exactly what I'm trying to get at. You see that this works in an ancient context.
Sure.
You also see this works in a modern context. You see, oh, this really happened to real people. And you see, but it's talking about more than just the event itself.
The hard thing is uncovering what exactly it's talking about.
Right. And so you slow down and you begin to memorize things. The sea carries with it these implications. Interesting. It's most of the ancient world had stories where the gods calmed the seas. Here, God is not calming the sea. God is wielding the sea. And so he goes beyond even the power of the ancient stories. He's not saying Marduk came and battled the sea and now it is going to behave itself in his presence. This is our God didn't just notice that there was a problem. The sea is his creation. It is his servant. And so in a very complex way, he's elevating the story of the Lord beyond that of the pagans. And so the chaos that existed there wasn't accidental. It is showing the power of God. And you can take that from the actual historical and poetic symbolism and reality in the story. And then you can apply that to myself. The chaos that's happening in my life, is this something that God needs to overcome? Or can this be something that God is wielding to bring about a change and a purpose in my own life and in my own world?
That's really good. Another aspect of the story that I'm trying to put together a little bit here is when Pharaoh's people would have entered into the sea, physically went in, because the waters are pulled up and the land is dry. Israelites walk straight through it. The Egyptians are right behind them. Don't you think that Pharaoh was probably praying to his God to keep the seas back? That's another aspect of this that I'm just thinking of as we're live going through this. The idea is he wasn't just like, man, I hope their God holds it back a while. He's saying, my God, if their God can do it, mine can do it.
Yeah, he has really put his faith into motion.
And he is the representation of the God. So he has the authority. I mean, he is their Jesus, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, he is their promised Messiah, their God on the earth. And there's a lot of ways that this story connects to the Elijah and the prophets of Baal.
Perfect.
Where you see these guys are the representatives of these beings, and they fail.
And him going into it wasn't an idea of like, maybe we can sneak in Mission Impossible style and just get out on the other side before it crashes in on us. He's saying, take your time, get across. My guy will push it farther, and then we'll crawl across. Like he's almost David and Goliath, like tempting their God. If your God's so strong, look at my guy. He's twice the size of your guy. Like there's this idea of this wasn't a thought that he had any inclination of dying. He was ready to push the sea back himself with a broom if he needed to, and walk his people right across. And so that shows the power and dominion that God has over his creation, which is perhaps the spiritual beings behind this, but definitely Pharaoh on earth, that he does not control this. God does.
I think you're right. What else do you guys notice in here? Is there anything that jumps out at you as having ancient context as well as modern?
Well, Miriam's in it, and that's my cat's name, so that's ancient and modern.
But you didn't name your cat after him.
No.
Although it would have been a cool, like she's Egyptian.
Yeah.
Cats.
But it's just the dictionary.
Yeah. Well, notice what it calls Miriam.
The prophetess?
Yeah, she's a prophetess. She's also called the sister of Aaron, but nothing about Moses.
Why?
No idea.
Well, why do you think?
Let me think. So if this is being written after, after the event, and maybe I was actually going to ask, when would this have been written in Moses' career?
Oh, I don't know. It could have actually even been written after Moses' lifetime.
So you don't know that Moses actually wrote this particular story?
No,
down?
I think there's a Mosaic core, and that later on, bits and pieces of things written by Moses and the Levites were then added together into one scroll.
So put a pin in that, because in this right here, because I want to go back for a second. So on that note, the whole thing about control and power, I was thinking more about how God brings order out of chaos. And that's the very first book of the Bible in Genesis, where he talks about separating the waters from the waters and put an expanse between them. And so in this story, would they have even been aware of the creation of the waters and the order that he brought if it had never been written down and taught to them?
I think so. I think that what Genesis is the compilation of the stories of the Jewish people. Whether they actually were ever given a small Gideon Old New Testament or something like that, I don't know that. But yeah, I think that they were familiar with these stories. When you read the creation account, though, God doesn't battle the ocean backwards. He just moves it. He speaks, and it's so. He fills it with the creatures of the deep. They're not rivals to his power. They're originally intended to be part of his kingdom and his creation.
Well, then I wonder, on that note of when the story was being told, Miriam was a sister of Aaron who became the priest, the high priest.
yeah.
So is she like the female counterpart to Aaron? I'm not trying to write scripture. It's not there. It's a
No,
question.
you should, because why does it call her the prophetess, and why does it call her the prophet or the high priest's sister? And why doesn't Moses get mentioned? Was the priest and the writer upset with Moses when he wrote this? We don't know. But what you can do is look at that and ask, what does that highlight? Firstly, it highlights the individuality of a woman as a leader within Israel. This is not them saying, you know who's important? The boys. That's who's important. Moses is leading the people across. Miriam is leading them in worship. Aaron is leading them in the temple. The entire family of Moses is engaged in this activity. And so when I look at this, I don't see a hierarchy of importance. Instead, I see the Lord seems to be lifting up all of the branches of the people of Israel. And so how does, no one tells her, would you compose something for us? And then, like, this is her seeing what God does, and she responds in worship, and such powerful worship that it draws other people along with them into worship. That's the idea of a worship leader. There's a great difference between a guy who can play a guitar and a worship leader.
Oh, sure. We've talked about that.
There just is. And so when you're reading this, I see Miriam is called not just the girl who's related to the important people, but she is the prophetess. She has a relationship with God all on her own. And where is this highlighted? After chaos, after the crossing of the sea. How did God get his people across? He doesn't teleport them like he does Philip in the book of Acts. He doesn't just build a bridge for them or anything like that. He makes them walk through it.
She also says the horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. Not a mention of Pharaoh. Nothing. It's almost like a dumbing down maybe of him and his power and his chariots and all of that. She's like, that's nothing. Like the Lord threw it all into the sea.
Did you catch that the very first thing Miriam wants to talk about is that? The horse and his rider? Whereas we would have been like, all right, chariots are there. Of course there are. There's Egyptian armies. I associate that with horses and chariots.
Yeah, we've had coloring books. We know what they look like.
When Miriam stops to think about this, in her mind, the forces of war and destruction are the horse and the chariot, the horse and his rider, which I think is a really beautiful way of describing this. All of them collectively together are the horsemen. When you hit the book of Revelation, you're going to find the destruction of the world is described as introduced through the lens of the horsemen who have come. It's not Jesus meek and mild. He returns on horseback with the heavens behind him coming down into the earth. Or even when Jesus enters into Jerusalem, he doesn't enter on the back of a horse, but humble upon a donkey. And so this symbolism has immediate, gets her symbolic, poetic worship leader mind cooking. And she's thinking, my God just threw them into the sea. Now, did God actually throw them into the sea?
Did he throw the sea onto them?
I was just going to say that.
Well, I mean, it's you can look at this, you can say, okay, she's not actually describing the physical reality of what happened. But anyone who has read any kind of poetry should recognize, oh, okay, there was a bad interaction between someone powerful and the sea. What she is showing you in this little tiny poem, and I would like to have heard the rest of this song, or was it just like one of those choruses that keeps going? It's beautiful because it gives me a glimpse into the mind of an ancient woman and how she worshiped God and how she used the events that happened around her to make sense of the supernatural powers that are at play in her life.
I think it's very important to figure out that distinction, because if you look at the historical facts, God did not pick them up and toss them into the sea where they just couldn't swim back to shore. That did not happen. They walked across. But understanding that that is a representation of defeating the chaos by putting them into the chaos is important, because it was their idea to walk into the water. God didn't say, now you must do this. He said, your pride is going to make you do this. Your ability to think you can conquer me is what's going to push you into the water, and then it's going to be your demise. So he doesn't physically push them in there. It was their doing. People talk about God of the Old Testament being such a mean and relentless God. It's not. He didn't force them to do this. Their rebellion is what led to their demise, the same way yours will with you, and mine will with mine. And so it's important to know that, but when she says it in such a manner, it's a much better representation of my God's power kicked your God's power or your people's power right out the door and into the bottom of the sea.
And even worse than that, when we both walked into chaos, I walked out.
Bingo.
Why? Because the Lord was with us. What power protected you? Nothing. You are in your watery grave. You are in the underworld. And so she looks at this and she doesn't say, it would be important for me to capture for posterity the actual historical events. Let me count the spears. How many horses? What formation were they in? What color was Pharaoh's hat? None of that comes in. What she wants you to see is the Lord mighty and awesome. And so the Bible is a story, yeah, but it's showing you God. It's not a story about us. It's a story about God.
Is it interesting that it seems that Pharaoh directed his attention on the power that he needed to overcome being the sea?
I don't know. There's a lot you guys should be digging into here.
It's just an interesting thought because he thinks that, oh, that's the sea. I can conquer the sea. But that wasn't his foe. His foe was Israel and the God that was in Israel.
Yeah, so Pharaoh was trying to, his whole job is to maintain something that Egyptians call ma'at, which is the status quo. The river needs to flood at the appropriate moment, and everything needs to work the right way. The gods got to do their part, and I lead the physical people in relationship with them. So I have to do things to make the gods happy. And so he seems to be thinking, wow, something spiritual is happening. What will make the gods happy is vengeance. You think of like Cain's story. He's worried about this. Or later on with Lamech, vengeance is mine 70 times 7. And then you get Jesus and he says, you've been wronged. What do? You forgive over and over and over. You bring the fruit of the Spirit of God into the darkness.
What I'm trying to get at, though, I think a little bit is the fallibility of human beings. Paul talks about it when he says we don't struggle against flesh and blood, but the principalities and powers behind that. What Pharaoh does is he struggles with the flesh and blood. He thinks the sea is who he needs to conquer, not God. If you would have told Pharaoh, hey, you have to go up against God Most High, do you think you can beat him? Probably going to say no, right? But if you said, hey, Pharaoh, you have to go against the sea and all those weak Israelites that don't even have chariots, I can do that. Think of how the darkness works in your world. Darkness never comes to you and says, hey, you think you can beat God? No, but hey, you think you can beat your coworker in an argument? You think you can downplay this? You think you can uproar this? Yeah, I can definitely beat them.
Oh, I can definitely see that. Because,
do that.
I mean, whose sea was it? Like, this is part of Egypt's empire.
Right.
Like, who's closer to their source of power? Pharaoh would have thought in that pagan way, this is my home turf. But the Lord doesn't operate like the ancient gods claimed that they were operating. He is able to wield his power anywhere, as he just demonstrated through the plague. I mean, Pharaoh should have been catching on to this, but never mind.
Hindsight's 2020.
Let's push on from this story. Miriam leads a good song. Everyone is excited. A great, great delivery from God. Let's jump now to Exodus 15, 22 through 27.
Then Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Then they came to Mara. They could not drink the water of Mara because it was bitter. Therefore it was named Mara. And the people grumbled against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And he cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made for them a statute and a rule, and there he tested them, saying, if you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God, and do that which is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all of his statutes, I will put none of these diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your healer. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the river.
So you're seeing again another watery scene. When I am looking at this, I have a couple questions. First of all, why doesn't God simply remove the bitter water? Didn't he know they were coming? Like when you guys send a text to me or Aaron that says, be at your house in 10 minutes, I need you to know what's happening. Is that Aaron has leaped from her chair and grabbed me, and we are whirlwind cleaning because we have toddlers who live in our house. We want you to come in and want for nothing. Back when we used to be friends, Rose, this was the rule. Even now, if you came, this would happen. Is I want to provide for you. It's almost as though God has, did he forget? Like, why didn't he prepare sweet waters for them? Why did he lead them to a place with bitter water?
Especially when you talk about how he orchestrated the event in the last story. Like he handpicks this place to be the perfect representation of what is going on. And then yet, just a few chapters later, he forgot to sweeten the water?
Yeah, so you got to look at
Doesn't
this
make
and
sense.
say, okay, what would an ancient audience have thought about this? And why is this story recorded? Because God did a lot of things. I really like the ending of the Gospel of John where he says, if I had written down all the things Jesus did, I'd still be writing. There's not enough paper in the world to write down all of these things. So they thought this to be an incredibly important story. Thinking back to how ancient people thought about springs, if the water was poison, bitter, then there was some spiritual entity at work in the water making it bitter, making it poisonous. The wilderness is deadly because death walks there. If this is a good spring, it has healing qualities, you would go bathe in the waters because they wanted that goodness to rub off on them. Now, I know, scientifically speaking, some water is just yucky, and it's just the luck of the draw and of how the way that God made the world. But God is going to use this thing to become a theological statement. He's going to engage the world as he made it. And he's also going to engage the world as they understood it to say something about himself. So when he brings them to bitter waters, what would they have thought was in the water?
Well, I would assume that they would have thought there'd be some kind of a curse, or do they believe in demonic activity? Is this okay? All right. So something along those lines, which is interesting because the first thing Moses does is cries to the Lord. You know, his faith is tracking correctly.
Yeah, an ancient pagan person would probably have sacrificed something to keep whatever was deadly in the water. Like, what keeps it in there? What if it leaks out onto us? We would look at that and be like, well, just don't drink it. But ancient peoples didn't understand germ theory and all that stuff that is part of your world. They saw there's an unseen threat here. The water looks good, but it's bad. Something is wrong here. And they would have sacrificed. The world's full of ancient springs that are filled with sacrifices. Moses, though, when he encounters this spring, he doesn't say, don't worry, God, I'm going to call up the local mobster who lives here and make sure that the payments are made to the appropriate gang that operates this particular well. He goes to the Lord and says, provide for me. Not that this is your holy well, God, so you have power over it, but we are your people and we are following where you're leading us. Provide for us. Did you catch that it calls God a healer?
Yes, I
In
love
connection with the water? How did the water become sweet?
that. By throwing a tree in it.
Have you
An
ever
eights.
thrown,
Yeah,
a
right.
tree, eights. Have you ever thrown something into a pond, a lake, the
A million
ocean?
times.
Very small rocks.
It doesn't really change. Good job, Monty Python. It doesn't really change the pond that much, the lake.
Well,
that
according
much.
to my mother, it changed it completely.
You think
She-
so?
Oh, she told me, quit throwing those rocks in because then all the water is going to come out and go wherever because it's just going to be rocks.
What kind of rock were
Like
you throwing?
Displacement theory? with
Yeah, I
boulders?
guess. I don't know, but I got yelled at so many times for throwing
Archimedes would have
rocks
been
in there.
proud. Yeah, so you're looking at this and you say, okay, so Moses throws in a symbol, a tree, a piece of tree into the water, but who is it that he believes healed the waters?
The Lord.
The Lord. And who is it that we then say, okay, if God can heal not only the waters, what else can God heal? He says there, and the Lord will do, if you do that which is right in his eyes and give ear to his commandments and keep all of his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your healer. He's talking about the plagues of Egypt. That's pages ago. Never miss a teaching opportunity seems to have been the philosophy here. God says, do you know where your health comes from? It comes from me. This water looks good and tastes like death. Do you know who can fix that? The one who makes the trees to grow, the one who has pointed you in this direction. And eights are a symbol of the power of God, of life erupting from the earth. You remember when Moses visits the burning bush, the little tree that's on fire and isn't consumed? God gives him a symbol of his authority, and it's a staff, it's a branch. He gives him part of a tree to show that he is the representative of the God who is in the bush. This is the way God. Now, is God more than that? Yes, but he's not less than that. This is part of how the Bible talks. And so I see a well, a spring that is bitter. It's not like Moses was like, you know what? I happen to know that this particular piece of wood has a medicinal property, which is just perfect to offset the pH balance of this particular pool of water. That's how an EPA agent might take a look at a bitter spring. But this is a supernatural act that is intended to draw you into the healing power of God.
The craziest thing that I see from this, or the most interesting thing that I see, Rose kind of hinted it as well. When Moses doesn't know what to do, he goes to the Lord instead of trying to figure out a different way. Like you're saying, let's look at it scientifically, let's look at it financially, let's look at it this way, and let's come up with a solution. That's how we handle life today, I feel like, a lot.
That's our culture, absolutely.
Because we have a lot of time, resources, and energy that we can do to fix a lot of problems that we have. So naturally, we run into this. But what I think is interesting is that the people cry out first. The people come to Moses and say, we got nothing to drink, Moses. And I just see that so often in everybody's life. Again, if you go from just your own life, people come to you with problems. If they don't, I'll give you some of my friends because that's all I get from them. So like
That's why I unfriended John.
people come to them with problems and instantaneously it's my job to solve them. When my wife comes to me with something like, hey, we need this, instantaneously it's my responsibility to solve them because I'm a leader or I'm this or I'm that or whatever. It's my job. Moses is the leader of all leaders as far as Israelites concerned. He doesn't say, I got it. Hold on a second. Let me get my shovel, start digging for some more water. And so, but you can see almost the chain of command, if you will, with that. But Moses doesn't turn around to them and say, you guys pray. He takes his job seriously, and his job he knows is to be aligned with God. And so when you look at the hierarchy of things, because you can put yourself in all three of these categories all the time. Most of the time I put in this position of God and figure out, I need to figure this out. A lot of times I should be more like Moses, and every now and then I should be like the people of Israel. I don't know what to do. I need to go to somebody that's wiser and older than me. Or I need to be the wise and old one and figure out a way to bring God's solutions to the people. And so, again, people ask all the time about how can we live our lives? What are we supposed to be doing? It's all riddled through the Bible. This story right here tells you the hierarchy or the line of command.
Yeah, the flow.
Yeah, of what this looks like. And you can be at any point in this, depending on which situation you are in.
Yeah, and I think you need to expect that. Regardless if you're a guy or a girl or you're related to Moses or you're not, you're going to have moments where you need to step and say, okay, what do I need to do? I need to recognize every good and perfect thing comes down from the Father of lights. It is flowing from the hand of God. And so if I think I can control it, that's probably a bad instinctual reaction. I want to do my best, and I have done this before, but I will do so with the Lord. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain. They build it. So it's not saying you don't matter. God gives Moses a way to be involved in what's going on. Take that tree, take that branch, and throw it into the pool. Everyone would have understood. This isn't Moses wielding his own magic. Moses, the representative of the king, has now delivered the goods to me, almost like a waiter at a restaurant. I don't assume the waiter made it. But I thank him or her or whoever for bringing me the stuff.
But that takes you back to the garden because you're talking about the purpose that mankind was created with to tend and to keep. It wasn't because Adam is just so amazing at tending or it has the ability to pull weeds and create beautiful things. It's he is representing God's creativity and God's creation.
Yeah, and you can see that in the ending of this story. Rose, would you read that one more time? Would you pick it up in verse 27?
Yes. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the water.
Does that seem like a ridiculously specific
I thought you were
thing
going to
to
shout
count?
out my dad.
Oh, why?
You did that Sunday. Funny, it's the 7th chapter, Dan.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's not an accident. Well, your dad and I talk about that. A lot of
the
times the 7th verse seems to have extra significance. But what you're seeing here, that word Elim, do you see how it looks like the word Elohim? It's because it's the same word, just with a different variation of spelling. So they come to a place called spiritual powers, and it has 70 palm trees and 12 wells, 12 springs of water. A minute ago, they were losing their mind because the one was bitter. God brings them past that one into a place with 12. There's one for each tribe. And so,
Feels like that would cut down on the sibling rivalry a little bit.
yeah, I
That was
think
generous.
so. You guys have been through a pretty awkward period of life. Let's give you all your own space. Everyone just go relax. You get your own room. It sounds nice. This feels like a paradise. It is an oasis, and it's marked by the presence of trees and the presence of water. What was the last story we just read? It was that there was a pool that was bitter, and it was fixed by the presence of a tree that was pointed out by God. What you see next is Israel is led to a place that seems to have supernatural implications, where the trees, not branches, but the whole trees are there. 70 is connected to the nations of the world, to the divine council that's there. You see this in Deuteronomy 32 and also in the end of the book of, or the section of Genesis where it gives the table of nations.
Isn't that also the number of Jacob's family that went down into Egypt?
Yep, and that's not an
70
accident
yeah.
either. You'll also find this with the sacrifices around the red heifer. They're offering up a lot of animals. 70 is a significant number. So who made these trees to grow way before this ever happened? The Lord set this in motion way before Israel ever stepped foot onto the scene.
I have a question, John.
I have one after you.
Maybe it's the same question.
All right, go. You first.
I have a question about the perspective, because at the beginning they found a well, and the well was bitter, and then the Lord made it sweet. At the end, all it says is there are 12 springs. Are they bitter? Are they sweet?
The implication is they're sweet
But why?
because it's the language here is connected to abundance. If there was a bitter spring, the trees would not be flourishing.
I would say that it's the perspective of the people. When they come up to the first well, they have to figure out if they can drink it or not. God then proves that he has dominion over the well, whether they think he does or not. So when they come up to these other wells, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the circumstance if you're in is bitter or is sweet.
I like it.
God is the one that puts you there.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. You can also tell like they've camped there. They've made a home. And so this is a usable place. Where did they was this marked on their maps? Were they heading to this place? We don't know. We simply know they're following where the Lord is leading them. And he leads them through bitter waters, dangerous waters, and to restful waters.
And I think that's the restful water is because probably it was all sweet. I agree with you. The way you read it, you assume that it's a good well to drink of. But also it's the idea of the perspective. When you go to work on a Monday morning, it's eerily similar to Friday morning.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's very, very similar. The work, the amount of stuff you're doing and everything like that. But your perspective on Friday morning is so much different than Monday morning because there's hope at the end of Friday that the weekend is coming. And I feel like the hope has been instilled in them that even if this water is bad, we know the source that can make it good. And I just feel like that's such a beautiful little implication of what is to come. And the idea that there's always hope when the Lord is on your side.
I love it. What was your question, Rose?
So this is backing up a little bit more to the middle of the verses. It seems as though what is going to be saving them is the obedience of Moses, because like you said, the log may or may not have done anything. We don't know. Could have been made out of charcoal. Like who knows? It might have been a filter. But the thing, okay.
Bring forth the holy filters.
That was good.
But the point is that the Lord tells him to do something and he does it. And then he turns to them and says, there the Lord made for them a statute and a rule, and there he tested them.
Yeah, he's testing them.
That's just an interesting way to put it. Like testing somebody to me typically has bad connotations. Like they need to prove themselves. And so they're they usually don't know it, but they're being tested. I'm kind of putting them on trial. I don't think that's what God is doing. Is he just setting up a standard, like a testing?
Oh, that's a good
like
question.
A refining,
It is the demonstration of what a thing is. Like if you're testing a bill to see if it's counterfeit, you don't actually expect the bill to do anything except reveal what it is. So testing in that sense is the idea that's here. The Bible Project has a great video on this. the trees of testing.
Okay, good to know.
I would recommend people check that out. And they actually have cut some really good episodes on this idea. But it's not testing as in pass your driver's test. It's testing in the sense of reveal what you are. And when they do that, they're revealed as grumblers.
Is it a little bit like the idea of setting a standard, like from here on out, this is what is going to be, and you need to conform to this in order to be the image that I want you to be?
Yeah, that's exactly right. When I am in a place where I don't see what I want, do I instinctively doubt and grumble, or do I go to the Lord and say, provide, help me?
So then it seems to be there's a little bit of a problem, because he goes on to say, and this was my question, why does he switch tenses or like point of view in this verse? If you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God and do that which is right in his eyes and give ear to his commandments and keep all of his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your healer. But my question, or my point actually, is that if Moses demonstrated listening diligently, giving ear, doing what is right in the Lord's eyes in this instance, it makes it so much sadder, his disobedience later on, that keeps him from going into the promised land. Like, they were looking to him for an example, and the Lord was setting him up as one for them, and he obeyed here, and they got sweet water, and they got, to a sweet oasis, and then nothing, 40 years in the wilderness after this from wandering, from his disobedience.
I think to add kind of that perspective.
You should have taught this, Rose. That was good.
Sweet.
Well, just to add a little bit onto that perspective is like Moses would have known that throwing a stick into the water wasn't going to cure it. Like we talk about the scientific knowledge that we have today. He's thrown stuff into water before. I'm going to make the assumption that Moses has done something like that.
All
before.
boys have done
Especially
this.
if you live by a river, which he did.
And so when we're talking about the testing of it is like, is Moses going to rely on his own understanding to say, God, this is not going to do it? Like, I'm going to look like an idiot. I have to go in front of all these people. Behold, splash. And like nothing's going to happen, right? Like I'm going to be
The water's
a
not
fool.
going to change appearance.
And so he has that knowledge in the back of his mind. This isn't just like, maybe this is a brand new thing no one's ever thought of before, and it's been revealed to me. No, I've thrown a stick into water before, God. Doesn't work.
Well, let's use this story and read it backwards onto other parts of the Moses story. Moses' mother wants to be delivered from slavery, wants to rescue her child, and has no ability, no power to bring about safety at all, and is driven to a point where the only thing she can do is wrap her child in the woody stalks of the plants that grow along the river and cast her child onto the waters. And it brings about, not through his own power, but through the God that is at work, it brings about the salvation from the slavery of Egypt. And so you can see, this reminds me of other stories. This is where correlation comes in. And that's why I put correlation at the end of my Bible study rhythms that I do, because you're exactly right. When you look at this, you can see, I think this may be bigger than just this one idea. It can flow into other spots. Now, I had every intention of covering Moses's failure to go into Israel because of his debacle at the rock. But Moses is going to have to wait, because Martin is our village president and must be present for the village council.
We're in the presence of greatness.
Yes, and I am friends with him.
Remember February 16th, everybody. It's President's Day.
It's true. It's true. So we're going to wrap it up here, and we will come back next week. And if it's okay with you guys, we'll take a look at Moses then. And until then, my friends, remember that Jesus is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, mighty and awesome.